Everyone said he was a killer, and by the time Clara Vance arrived, no one was even questioning it anymore. The cage sat in the middle of Dry Hollow's main street, like something meant to be seen, not hidden, not avoided, displayed. 4 walls of black iron bars, a rusted lock, dust gathering at the base, as if it had always been there, and inside sat the man everyone had already decided was guilty. Jonah Blackwell didn't move, didn't speak, didn't look at the people gathered around him. He looked past them, like the world had already stopped being worth answering. That was what unsettled them most. Not anger, not resistance, not even fear. Just nothing. People whispered anyway. He doesn't even deny it. He doesn't have to. That's the kind he is. The kind. They always said that, when they didn't need to think any further. Clara arrived late, dust still clinging to her boots, a single satchel over her shoulder. She didn't ask where to go, didn't hesitate. She followed the voices. The crowd shifted as she moved through it, not because they knew her, but because she walked like someone who wasn't there to watch. She was there to understand. When she reached the front, she stopped. The cage was smaller than she expected. The man inside it wasn't. Jonah Blackwell sat against the bars, broad through the shoulders, face worn by sun and years, a scar running along his jaw. But it wasn't his size, or the scar, that held her attention. It was the way he held himself, still, deliberate, like he was refusing to give them what they came for. No performance, no anger, no plea, just presence. Clara frowned slightly. That didn't match the story. She had heard the rumors, everyone had. A mountain man, a killer, a man who had cut down 2 others and left them where they fell. But rumors had a way of becoming truth when enough people repeated them. She stepped closer, closer than most people dared. That was when he noticed her. His eyes shifted, slow, landing on her, like something unexpected had entered the frame. Not curiosity, not suspicion, recognition. Not of who she was, but of what she wasn't. She didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't pretend she hadn't come to see him. They held each other's gaze, dust lifting between them. The crowd faded, voices blurred. For a moment, it was just 2 people, standing on opposite sides of iron, trying to understand something no one else seemed interested in. Jonah looked away first. Not out of weakness, out of habit. People didn't usually hold his gaze that long. Clara exhaled slowly. Something in her had settled. Not certainty, but doubt. And doubt was enough to start something. By the time the crowd began to thin, she was still there. People left the way they always do, telling themselves they had seen enough. But Clara hadn't. Not yet. The street grew quieter. Shadows stretched longer. And the cage no longer looked like a spectacle. It looked like a mistake. Jonah shifted slightly, the first real movement she had seen, and for a moment, he looked at her again. Different this time, like he was trying to understand why she was still there. Clara didn't speak. Not yet, because she had learned something important a long time ago. If you listen long enough, the truth starts to separate itself from the noise. And for the first time since she arrived, she was starting to hear it. She came back before the town woke, before the noise could drown it out again. Dry Hollow was quieter at dawn. Not peaceful, just honest. The buildings stood still, shutters closed, dust settled, like the town hadn't decided yet what it wanted to be that day. Clara walked down the empty street, the letter folded in her hand. She hadn't slept. Not properly. Her thoughts had circled all night around the same question. What if they were wrong? The cage was still there, exactly where they left it, and so was he. Jonah Blackwell sat the same way, back against the bars, wrists resting on his knees, but his eyes were open now, alert, watching. He heard her before he saw her, then he turned, and when he recognized her, something shifted. Not warmth, something more careful, like a man who expected to be forgotten and wasn't. You stayed. I did. Clara stepped closer, stopping just short of the bars. They looked at each other, not like strangers anymore, but not like anything else either. You came back. He said it differently this time, less like a question, more like something he was still trying to understand. I'm not most people, she said simply. That almost made him smile. Not fully, just enough to prove it was still possible. Clara crouched down, bringing herself level with him, removing the distance the bars had already created. She held out the letter. I wrote this 3 weeks ago, before I came here. He didn't take it, just looked at it, then at her. You wrote me a letter? I did. Why? That mattered to him. Clara held his gaze, steady. Because you didn't lie. That landed. He didn't move, but something inside him did. Everyone else in that registry, she continued quietly, they wrote what they thought someone wanted to hear. Easy land, good life, promises. You didn't. She paused, then, you wrote exactly what you had. A cabin, a mountain, hard winters, no guarantees. He looked down at the letter again, like it belonged to a different version of himself. I respected that, she said, so I wrote you. Silence settled between them. It was building something. Finally, he reached forward, took the letter through the bars, held it, turned it once, looking at his name written in her hand. You came to see if the rumors were true. Yes. She didn't hesitate. And? He asked it like it mattered, but like he already knew the answer wouldn't change anything. Clara looked at him, direct, unflinching. I don't think they are. That should have changed everything, but he didn't react, didn't defend himself, didn't argue. Instead, he handed the letter back, unopened. She frowned slightly. You're not going to read it? Not here. Why? He met her eyes again. Because if I read it in this cage, it won't mean what it should. That stayed with her, more than she expected. She nodded slowly, folded the letter again, and placed it back in her coat. I understand. And she did, more than she wanted to admit. They sat there, in the quiet of a town that hadn't woken yet, two people on opposite sides of something that felt smaller than it had yesterday. Tell me what happened, she said. This time, he didn't stay silent, because for the first time, someone was asking not to judge, but to understand. The town woke slowly, but the story woke faster. By mid-morning, people had started gathering again. Not as many as yesterday, but enough. Enough to remind him what they believed. Clara had stepped back from the cage. Not far, just enough to watch, to listen. Because truth rarely sits on the surface. It hides in what people repeat. Tell me what happened. She had said it earlier, and now he answered. There were two men. His voice carried no weight of defense, no urgency, just fact. Brothers, Harlan and Cole Dyer. They'd been running cattle across the lower flats, cattle that weren't theirs. Clara's eyes narrowed slightly. Stolen. Yes, they belonged to a rancher near the ridge. I told them to stop. Twice. And the second time? Clara asked. They didn't listen. A fight. I left them breathing, bloodied, but alive. That mattered. She felt it immediately. Then what? I rode back to my cabin. Next morning, the sheriff shows up, with 4 deputies. And a witness, Clara said. Yes, a man named Hugh Larkin said he saw me kill them. Clara didn't respond immediately, because she wasn't listening for the story. She was listening for the pattern. Who does he work for? Jonah looked at her, something sharper now. Ezekiel Crane. That name means something to you. It does now, she said. And before this? He's been trying to push me off my land for 2 years. There it was, not loud, but clear. Clara leaned back slightly, putting the pieces together. So, the Dyer brothers worked for Crane. You confront them, they go back to him, and suddenly, there's a witness. Jonah didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth had already taken shape. The crowd shifted closer, not understanding, but sensing something was happening. Clara stood, stepping back again, not away from him, toward something else. A decision. Jonah watched her. Carefully now. You're thinking. I am. She didn't hide it. And you're going to do something about it. That wasn't a question. Clara met his gaze. Yes. That landed differently. Not like hope. Like risk. You don't know this town. You don't know Crane. And you don't know what this will cost you. Clara held his gaze, steady. I know what it costs to do nothing. That stopped him, because that was something he understood, more than most. The sheriff returned shortly after. 2 deputies behind him. He unlocked the cage, spoke briefly, about a hearing, tomorrow. Quick, simple, already decided. Clara watched him closely. Not what he said, how he said it. Confidence, control. Too much of it, for a man who should still be proving something. When he walked away, she didn't follow him. Not yet. But she memorized everything. The way his hand rested near his belt, the way the deputies avoided eye contact, the way the witness wasn't there. Patterns. Always patterns. That afternoon, Clara went somewhere no one expected. Not the saloon, not the streets. The records office. A narrow room, dust heavy in the air, papers stacked in quiet neglect. The kind of place where truth doesn't shout. It waits. She asked questions, simple ones, names, dates, disputes, and slowly, something began to form. Not proof, not yet, but a pattern, and patterns lead somewhere. By the time she returned to the cage, the street was quiet again. Jonah looked at her differently this time. Not curiosity, recognition. You've been somewhere. Yes. She stepped closer. The witness, he's done this before. Jonah didn't move, but something in his eyes shifted, carefully, like something long buried was being tested. The hearing is tomorrow, I know, and they're not going to listen. Probably not. He studied her. Then why are you doing this? That question was real. Clara didn't answer right away. Then, because you didn't lie. That was it. No speech, no explanation, just truth. And for the first time, Jonah Blackwell didn't look like a man in a cage. He looked like a man who might be heard. She didn't sleep that night. Not really. Dry Hollow changed after dark. The streets quieter, but not empty. Men gathered in places they didn't want seen. Voices dropped lower. And truth moved more freely there. Clara moved through it carefully, not hiding, but not drawing attention. The saloon, the back room near the feed store, the narrow alley behind the laundry. She listened, asked small questions, never too many at once, because people tell you more when they think they're saying nothing. That's how she found him. Deputy Owen Hale, young, nervous, standing alone, turning his hat in his hands like it weighed more than it should. Clara stepped closer. You were there. He didn't look up. I don't know what you mean. She didn't argue, didn't push, just spoke. The witness lied. You know he did. His jaw tightened. You're going to let them hang a man on it anyway. That landed hard. He looked up then, fear in his eyes, but something else too. Wait. Clara didn't threaten him, didn't raise her voice. I've seen this before. Men who stay quiet don't stay free of it. Silence stretched, because he knew she wasn't wrong. I can't, he started. Yes, you can, she said. You just haven't decided to yet. That was the moment, the one where fear and truth pull in opposite directions. Clara didn't stay, didn't wait for an answer, because decisions like that aren't made under pressure. They're made when the silence gets too heavy to carry. Morning came cold. The courthouse filled quickly. People packed the benches, lined the walls, drawn in, the way people always are when something might break. Jonah was brought in, wrists in irons, expression unchanged. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at her. Clara gave a small nod. That was enough. Judge Halverson sat at the front, measured, unmoved. Sheriff Pierce spoke first, confident, too confident. He laid out the story cleanly, neatly, as if it had already been decided. Then the witness, Hugh Larkin. He spoke smoothly, too smoothly, every detail in place, the kind of story that had been practiced. Clara watched him. Not what he said, how he said it. No hesitation, no searching. That wasn't memory. That was rehearsal. Then Jonah spoke. No drama, no anger, just truth. The fight, the cattle, the men he left alive. Every detail, exactly as it happened. The room shifted. Not belief, but doubt. And doubt was enough to crack something open. The judge leaned forward. Is there corroborating evidence? Sheriff Pierce straightened. A blade belonging to the accused was found. Placed there, Jonah said. The room tightened. Then the door opened. Footsteps, slow. Deputy Hale walked in, pale, hands shaking slightly, hat turning in his grip. The room went still. "I need to say something." The sheriff stood immediately. "Hale, I need to say something." The judge gestured. "Proceed." Hale swallowed. "I was there when Larkin gave his statement." Silence deepened. "He didn't see anything. He said so." The sheriff stepped forward. "That's enough." "It isn't." Hale looked straight ahead. "You told him what to say. I heard it." That was it. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. The room broke, voices rising, shifting, changing. Sheriff Pierce's face hardened, but it was too late. The truth, once spoken, doesn't go back. What followed wasn't fast. Questions, statements, procedure. Justice doesn't rush, but it moves. And by the time the room settled again, everything had changed. The sheriff was no longer certain, the witness no longer steady, and the man in chains no longer alone. The town felt different after that, like something had been said that couldn't be taken back. Dry Hollow was quieter that morning, not empty, just careful. People moved slower, spoke less, and when they passed him, they didn't meet his eyes, not the way they had before. Jonah Blackwell stepped out of the courthouse. No irons, no guards, just the open air. He stopped for a moment, blinking in the light, like it didn't belong to him yet. Freedom, after something like that, doesn't feel real right away. The street stretched in front of him, familiar, different, and for the first time in days, no one was telling him who he was. Clara stood near the hitching post, exactly where she had been when she first arrived. Same satchel, same coat, same way of standing, like she knew where she was going. He walked toward her. They didn't rush it. They didn't need to. For a moment, they just stood there. No words. And somehow, that felt complete. "You spoke to him," Jonah said. "I had a conversation," Clara replied. He almost smiled. "You knew he'd come forward." "I thought he might." "You could have been wrong." "I could have. That didn't stop you." Clara met his eyes. "No." That stayed between them. Simple, certain. The letter, Jonah said. Clara reached into her coat, pulled it out, held it toward him again. This time, he took it, opened it. She watched him read. Not his face, but the small things. The way his shoulders shifted. The way his breath slowed. Like something inside him was being allowed to rest. When he finished, he folded it carefully, held it for a moment, then looked at her. "You wrote this before you knew anything about me, before I knew their version of you. I knew yours, the one that didn't lie. That was it. No grand speech, no promise, just truth." "I still mean it," she said. "Everything in that letter." He nodded once. "I know." And he did, not because of the words, but because she had stayed. They left Dry Hollow 3 days later. No announcement, no farewell, just gone. The mountain cabin was exactly what he had written. No more, no less. Rough wood, hard winters, long silence. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. Clara stood in the doorway that first evening, looking out over the valley, watching the light shift across the land. She didn't speak. She didn't need to, because for the first time, She wasn't stepping into a life she had to endure. She was stepping into one she had chosen. Seasons passed. The cabin grew. A second room, then another. A garden along the south wall, green against the harsh land. Children. A boy with quiet eyes. A girl who asked too many questions and never accepted easy answers. Evenings came slower there, the kind that stretch, where words aren't forced, they arrive. Jonah spoke more then, not to everyone, just to her, without guarding it, without shaping it, the way a man speaks when he knows he'll be heard. Clara listened, the same way she had that first day, through iron bars, when no one else had. Because that had been the beginning, not the cage, not the trial, but the moment someone chose to see him instead of what they were told to believe. And that was the one thing that had changed everything.